broadcasting live from the Business Radio X studios in Houston, Texas. It's time for Houston Business Radio. Now, here's your host.
Hello, Houston. Trisha Stetzel here, bringing you another episode of Houston Business Radio. It's my pleasure to introduce you to my amazing guest today, Mary McCorvey, a 7-time founder, Gulf War veteran, host of the podcast and the book, Experience Over Expectation, and creative force behind multiple ventures spanning media, technology, and social impact. She recently collaborated with Intuitive Machines. We're going to talk about that some more. The Houston-based aerospace company that made history by helping America return to the moon. Through her production company and storytelling work, Mary explores how courage, vision, and collaboration turn ambitious dreams into reality. Today, we'll talk about what it really means to take your moonshot in business, leadership, and in life, and how success often comes from the lessons learned when you don't quite reach the moon. Mary, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Trish. Very much appreciate it.
I'm so excited to have you on today. So tell us a little bit more about you, Mary.
Well, it's that introduction that you just gave me is a tough follow-up. I think for our conversation today, I'm extremely excited about talking about my passion around business, and especially around founding businesses and creating and executing those businesses in a very successful way, and that success can take on many forms. We have the traditional success of the hockey stick growth of a company. We also have the other kinds of success in founding companies and achieving the dreams that the founder has from the beginning and growing throughout. So I'm delighted to be here and talk with you about that.
Fantastic. So Mary, you founded 7 companies. What is it that keeps you coming back to build again and again?
Trisha, that's a great question. And as I started down the path of repeatedly founding companies, I started asking myself the question, my gosh, Mary, do you not have a commitment? But the answer evolved into, I came to understand that my sweet spot, my passion, my skill set is really in the founding space. It's in the ideation, it's in the creation, it's in the acknowledgement of an idea that can be brought to fruition and find its way in the business and also impacting people's lives in a positive way, that's an aspiration, I think, of most businesses, is that we want to impact our clients and the people that we interact with in a very positive way. Yeah. So when I accepted that founding is really what my passion is, that became an evolution for me over, like you said, 7 companies. And some of those companies went on to achieve their own measure of success, and other companies went on to become, to work their cycle and work their way out of business. And both of those ultimate destinations are, a part of the adventure of being a founder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Have you found a common thread that connects all of these businesses together? I know you described a few things that you're really interested in and things that you're really good at, but what is the common thread that connects all of these things that you engage in?
Well, as a founder, what I've really discovered is the through line for each founder can be different. So for me, for example, the ability to impact the greatest number of people is very, very important. And it completely influences the means by which I found companies and the creation of our product or our services. And so for other people, it can be, I want to influence a small group of people within my community or for a particular purpose. And that is a very different journey than the journey that I choose. But, you know, when you were talking earlier about my literal moonshot, right? That was an aspiration of reaching as many young people as possible on the face of the globe and influencing them to be able to take their own moonshot. So that's that through line of what is it that you're really trying to do. And as you're going through the journey, going back to, does this hit my goal? Is the decision that I'm making at any given time, is it true to the purpose of what we're trying to do? And that helps really in decision-making processes and outcomes.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you talk a little bit about how your military service and the things that you've learned there have translated into business for you?
Absolutely. Trisha, my military service, and I believe that most people, I haven't run across another military service person that hasn't said that the influence of their experience lasted them a lifetime and profoundly impacted their professional and personal lives. And so for me, I'm sitting here today talking with you because of the choices that I made in the military and the support and leadership that I received in the military. So my experience was, and my job was, with the American Forces Radio and Television Network. And that is an example of being able to reach a large number of people at one time. And that is an underscoring of my through line, for example. And that I went on to continue in communications and public affairs and broadcasting and journalism. And all of that came from my military experience. Why in the world would the military, you might ask, have a radio and television network? Why invest in that kind of an endeavor? And the purpose is, it takes me back to when I was serving in Kuwait toward the end of the Gulf War, and troops had moved up from Saudi Arabia and were there in the thick of the oil fires and the desert storms and the sand blowing. It was really miserable conditions. And in the middle of all of those thousands of troops, there was a truck. And in that truck was a broadcast booth. And in that broadcast booth, they were sending out information to the troops that were there. News from home, sports scores, familiar music, information that made the troops feel like they had some sense of reality within a very, very difficult environment. And that to me is a pretty laudable goal.
Yeah, that's huge. I remember, Mary, being in a foreign country. I was not in the desert. It was not a war zone. It was completely different, but being in a foreign country and only having the military network to watch TV and listen to music. And it was a blessing because there was nothing else that we could watch or understand being in a foreign country. Wonderful story. So, Mary, how do you balance this vision with execution? So as a founder, you have a big idea worth pursuing. And so there's a vision. How do you balance that with the actual execution of getting that business moving in the right direction?
That is a great question, Trisha. The process that I use is really pretty simple. I come up with an idea and I do the due diligence on it within myself upon reflection and within the marketplace to understand whether it is viable. And then I make a decision. I'm going to dedicate my time, talent, and heartbeats to make this happen. And then I gather around me the right resources, the right people. I am blessed by the knowledge that I don't know everything, right? But what I do know and what I can do very well is I can surround myself with people that are great at what they do. And then we can come together with a plan for execution, and then we execute on that plan. That's the process that we go through.
I love that. So, Mary, you know that a lot of my audience are military veterans, some of them even active duty, but most of them veterans. What advice would you give to someone who's transitioning from the military into the civilian world and wants to do work like you did, be a founder, start a business? What would you tell them? Where should they start?
That's a big leap. It's moving from directly from the military into the entrepreneurial world. Sounds like it's something that, it's very appealing to a lot of military people. I would say that an understanding of moving from a large system with a great deal of structure and support and into an environment that has no structure and very little support is a big leap. Now, should they not do it? I'm not suggesting that. I think that someone who has a passion and knows what they want to do and has the ability to do it, meaning to gather the resources around them and execute. As military people, we're very, very good at execution. But we also know that the training that we have received to go onto the mission, when you get out into the mission, you know that it's very different, and you adapt and you adjust. And those are very great skills to have in the entrepreneurial space. Going directly into that is, again, something that requires a lot of thought, especially if you have a family, because you need to be able to support them and have a roof over their head and food on the table. Yes. So what I would recommend is there is often within the military transition, most often members that come out and go into the business world go into a job that helps them understand where they fit into the civilian society and what the differences are between being in the military and being in a civilian job. That often takes, a year. Sometimes it can be 2. But during that period of time, what I recommend is that you learn what it's like to be in the civilian world. You think about your idea. You gather your resources, and then you can execute with some additional measure of reassurance. Whereas if you go directly, it's a big risk in any case. Risk around entrepreneurism is very, very high. And what I do is every time I have a very high tolerance for risk, but risk mitigation is extremely important to me.
Mhm.
And in the military world, we call it safety. Let's be sure to save lives, right? In entrepreneurism, it's like, okay, how do we mitigate risk associated with the success of this company and the success of the people within it? So it's a whole different ball of wax than a military experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so Mary, I am sure that people have questions for you. I would love to be able to connect them to you. What is the best way for my audience to connect with you?
The best place to find me is at marymccorvey.com. And I'm also on LinkedIn. And I welcome connections with anyone that wants to talk about business, especially veterans. I have a long time commitment to helping military members who are transitioning and also veterans who want to start their own businesses. So
I
I'm
love
glad to
it.
help anyone.
Thank you so much, Mary. Her last name is spelled McCorvey. If you're looking for, of course, I will have that in the show notes. So you guys can just point and click and get into contact with Mary. Okay, so I've heard some really great things. One, so much passion for the things that you do and having a vision and being able to execute. And the most important thing that I heard was you have to have the resources, and you talked about the humans that you surround yourself with. And I think that is so important. The people that we choose to have in our room, or the people that we choose to go forward with that plan, is so important. So can we talk about something kind of fun since I'm in Houston?
Absolutely.
I would love to talk about your collaboration with Intuitive Machines. So how did that partnership come about, and what was it like helping a Houston-based team land on the moon?
Well, I don't know that I helped them land on the moon. They were trying very hard to help me land on the moon. I came up with this idea that I really wanted. I found out that the evolution of commercial space had reached a point where Intuitive Machines is one of several companies that received NASA contracts to land on the moon again after so many years.
Mhm.
And I said, well, if somebody's going to the moon, I would really like for young people to have an opportunity to go with them, not personally. Because people say to me, Mary, they know me well, Mary, don't send young people to the moon. Don't. And I said, all right, I won't do that. But I'll do everything possible to send their work to the moon.
Mhm.
So we came up with an idea for a company called Moonmark. And Moonmark's mission was to create opportunities for young people to develop, design, and build lunar rovers that would go on Intuitive Machines landers on a rocket, on a SpaceX rocket that would land on the moon. And when they got up there, they had a fun mission of racing each other. And then they had a scientific mission that had a 30-year longevity to help with geospatial work on the moon after the race was completed. So we had a very fun element to that. And people will ask me, well, because I was asked when I came up with this idea, Mary, are you an astrophysicist? No. Are you a rocket scientist? No. Are you an engineer? No, I'm not any of those things, but I know how to find those people.
Mhm.
And going through the process, well, first of all, I had to know how I could fund this business. What was the business model around it? And the business model was that I had successfully used this business model before and was very comfortable with it. Have corporations do marketing sponsorship for young people to be able to, so that we would document their journeys on their competitions to get their work on the moon. And then we would distribute those videos and films so that the sponsors would have the marketing value that they invested in. So that's how we got money in the door to do what we were trying to do. Then we needed some rocket scientists and some physicists and some engineers, and we turned to Intuitive Machines in Houston. And I cannot say enough about that company and the work that they have done. It truly is an extraordinary company in and of itself. What they've been able to do in the commercial space range is absolutely fascinating from a business perspective. And they also have a culture that one wants to emulate in the business world. And so we got together and we aligned our two missions, and we were on the path to get these young people's work on the moon. What happened? The pandemic happened. We were supposed to land on the moon in October of 2021. Well, we know what happened. And when the pandemic happened, the space world essentially slowed down to a crawl, as did many industries across the world. And so by the time Intuitive Machines was ready to go to the moon in March of 2024, we had lost our window of doing what we wanted to do. And so it was a very, very painful thing to do, to wrap up Moonmark, because that was my founder's moonshot. But what we were able to do is a global competition for young people to design rovers that could operate on the moon, and they did.
Wow. So Moonmark was essentially a success even after all of the things that you had been through. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
I want to talk about Moonshot. And you say you missed your moonshot because we didn't actually get there, but you created something really amazing. So what does Moonshot mean to you now? And how do you translate that mindset into leadership here on Earth?
Well, there are many people who would like to bring Mary back down to Earth. That's always a great inspiration to have. No, when I would like to share that the moonshot, mine was a literal moonshot, right? But the moonshot for the individual founder doesn't have to be that extraordinary. It can be something that you desire to have the impact that you want to have. If you want to have a dry cleaning business and you want to grow that dry cleaning business to franchises across the region or across the country, okay, that's a moonshot. Mm-hmm. And there are things that are associated with that you have to understand and be willing to go after. And those are things that I call, the 4 o'clock wake up call, the 4 a.m. wake up call, where you lay in bed and you go, what in the world am I doing? Mm-hmm. Is this possible? What is the impact that I'm having? What is the realistic aspects of what I'm doing, what I'm facing, and what I'm achieving or not achieving? Mm-hmm. And the decisions that come around that. And that's where the leadership comes in. Sometimes you have to make really tough decisions. Sometimes the scalability of the business is regional and not national. Sometimes you're saying, well, I took a shot to open 5 dry cleaning companies, and I opened 2. Okay, but you took that moonshot. What are the elements in place that require you to be able to take that moonshot? And that I will go back to risk management, right? You have to be willing to take a big risk to take your moonshot, but you also have to do everything within your power to mitigate those risks, to manage those risks, to enable the ability for you and your company to achieve the potential that you want.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So I think, Mary, this is a good time for us to chat a little bit about the book and the podcast of the same name, Experience Over Expectation. What would you like the listeners to know about that book? And then tell us where to find it.
Well, I wrote the book Experience Over Expectation because I wanted to share stories of my professional and personal life and the journey that I took to write this book. So it's not a normally written book because I'm not a normal person. So what I did was I took stories from my professional and personal life, and I asked artificial intelligence, 5 actual platforms of artificial intelligence, to analyze those stories. Okay. And what they ended up, what the culmination of the different work of the different platforms resulted in a massive literature search of thousands and thousands of like cases of my particular story. So I said, here was my story, here were my choices, here were my decisions, analyze it. And it came back with, these are the implications of what you decided. Here are case studies of others who made similar and different decisions. And the reader can align themselves and their own experiences with learnings from, that's my intent anyway, learnings from the artificial intelligence analysis.
Wow, that's amazing. So, Mary, where can we find your book?
Well, you can find it on Amazon, of course, and also anywhere you find your books.
Okay, fantastic. So, you guys, if Mary ever writes another book, we'd want to be a fan of hers on Amazon. So, go find her as an author, Mary McCorvey, McCorvey. Favorite her as an author. So, the next book she writes, you'll get a notification and go buy this one.
Thank you so much, Trisha.
Yes, of course, Mary. We are at the back end of our time, but I do want you to tell us a little bit about your podcast, and then I have one more question for you.
Okay. The podcast Experience Over Expectations is one where I welcome individuals who have very unique stories to tell. And we focus on what those particular stories are and how they are, and you will find this aligning with my through line, how they relate to many, many different people on a universal level.
Okay.
What's your last question?
So my last question for you, Mary, is for someone listening right now who's ready to launch their own moonshot in business, leadership, or even in life. What's the first step they should take before liftoff?
Before liftoff? It's a long way to Tipperary when you're thinking about lifting off.
I know. I'm just playing on words.
If you want, the thing that I have learned is that we have a finite number of heartbeats, and how we choose to spend those heartbeats is essentially, an everyday decision. And so if you find yourself in a moonshot state of mind, taking a real stretch for yourself, then think about, how am I spending my heartbeats? Is it driving it more? Is this a good investment of my heartbeat, my time, my talent? And answer that question. Do the reflection, do the internal work necessary, because as I mentioned, it's a long way to Tipperary, and a lot of days and nights of questions and answers and decisions that will lead you to reach for that moon mark or that moonshot and achieve takeoff.
Amazing. I love that. How are you spending your heartbeats? Mary, this has been so amazing. Thank you for spending your time with me today. I have really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you, Trisha.
All right, you guys, if you want to connect with Mary, it's Mary McCorvey, McCorvey. Her contact information will be in the show notes as well. And that's all the time we have for today. So if you found value in this conversation that Mary and I had, please share it with a fellow entrepreneur, veteran, or Houston leader ready to grow. And as always, please follow, rate, and review the show. It helps us reach more bold business minds just like yours. Your business, your leadership, and your legacy are built one intentional step at a time. So stay inspired, stay focused, and keep building the business and the life you deserve.